Hey, Asa Church here, Crawlspace Ninja and Basement Ninja. In this video, Michael and Corey Spone from HydroWay have a conversation discussing best practices for installing HydroWay in your basement or crawlspace.
So let me ask you a question. I hear all these old waterproofers, been around 30, 40 years, they talk about how you should make the drain tile grade towards the pit. So in other words, you've got to have the pipe grading downhill towards the pit. Do you feel like that is necessary? Because sometimes these crawl spaces are so large, by the time you got to the bottom of the grade, you might have to put the pit 6 feet down. Tell us a little bit about that in your experience, because I'm guessing in a basement scenario, you don't grade it, it's flat. So tell us a little bit about your experience with that.
You really want to create a pathway for the water to go. It's going to find its way. If you could incorporate a slight drop, there's probably an advantage to that, like an inch or two over a long run. But the reality is, if you do the math, you'd be feet down sometimes in the corner of a long run. I would just say getting along the footer is still better. And, maybe be conscious. If you got a 40-foot run, if you can get it down a few inches, you're only aiding the water. But the reality is, typical designs, they're never really getting in that pipe. And it takes years for the migration of soils to get into the gravel until the pipe actually acts as a carrier of water. And whether it's on grade or not, I don't have enough case studies to prove that it works or not, but water's getting in that house without a grade is going to get out with a very minimum grade.
Right. So one of the things we've even do is the last 2 to 3 feet of the run near the pump, you try to grade it down, like a siphoning system where it has a little bit of a drop to pull water faster. It's better to put the grade near the pump than it is to try to grade the entire system.
Absolutely. And then you got the fact that you're getting to compromising footings when you go too deep anyways. You don't want the water to go up. Let's clarify that. You don't want to have it traveling up. With our product, if you put 2 of HydroWay, if you think about it from this standpoint, 2 rows of HydroWay, or just hold one up here for reference. The water table could be high down here, and then over your whole life, your foundation, if this is an illustration, it just slightly goes down. The water's still going to carry out through this in this scenario. It's still going to act extremely effective. You don't need it to grade it down toward the sump pump the entire time. But if you go back to the comparison I said with your footer is flat.
Right.
I mean, it's 100% flat. That's the goal. If you have a 70-foot run on a house, I wouldn't want to get down 2.5, 3 feet below my footer, compromising those soils. I would just probably have a few inch drop on there. I've seen it done a lot of ways, but rarely have I actually seen a grade, say a 1% grade the entire time. It's too much labor, and it doesn't seem like it's an effective method.
Well, and back to your point about how you install the HydroWay, there's a grade built in inside the pipe.
Yeah, we have more area for our system to allow for a higher amount of water at one end than the other while it's draining. Eventually, it'll be a dry cavity.
Well, and touch on that real quick, and if you don't mind, show that again, because we get questions all the time about installing it flat versus installing it vertical like you just showed.
If you install HydroWay flat, HydroWay is a very effective drain in athletic fields. And the reason being is these fields are laser grade, and we can do them as much as a 0.5%. Well, we know it's at grade the whole time. You can't do that in a crawl space. So if you choose to do it, our system might be extremely effective, but it's only got an inch of an area to kind of play with that water table that could be in your basement. So when you do it vertically, you're allowed to catch water along the footer. It comes in and down along the footer. You're allowed to catch hydrostatic pressure that's coming up from the bottom and pushing on the sides. As the cavity fills with water, it has this entire area up and down to hold water. So the system, in theory, addresses everything when it's installed vertically on a foundation. Hydrostatic pressure issues, we have more of a water table to work with for draining, and we're very forgiving with grade. I don't recommend you put it in horizontally unless you wanted to overkill and stack like 4 rows on top of each other. You'd have a really effective drainage system, but it would be not cost effective.
If you're installing it outside the house to take care of a swampy area of the yard or something like that, could you get by with a flat install as long as it was on grade versus a vertical install, or do you still recommend a vertical?
That's the only thing I hesitate to recommend for yard work or residential work, landscaping work, even golf course and natural turf field work. I always recommend vertically because We can do a small trench. You can get in and out. You can backfill several different types of aggregates from sands to coarse gravels. You get more of that forgiveness and you have a system that works. And when you go horizontal, we have a lot of benefits, but there's a lot of area to mess up. You're not going to get water to travel uphill that well when it only has 1 inch to move. It's going to be dependent on whatever porosity is above and below it. So hydroway will allow water to pass out and back into it easily. So you rely on the fact that you have sand or gravel, if you're not on grade, to pick that up and carry it. For that standpoint, I would be worried that you might see an effectiveness in the drainage. That's why we typically don't recommend horizontal applications for areas that aren't flat work where we have control. You can't really do that in a basement.
Tell us some best practices for installing hydro. You recommend a dig of at least 9 inches. Can you share with us why that's important in a crawl space or something like that to get past that hard soil you mentioned before?
We recommend as an OEM that we go in a crawl space at least 9 inches down. When you go to a crawl space, you have several things you could be looking to do. You could be, one, you're trying to remove the water that's in the crawl space. And so we've already got wet soils, we've got dampness, either you've got an existing membrane or encapsulation down there and you can feel it squishy throughout it. So you're going to go install water management drainage system. Well, if you just do something like a lot of folks do where they just barely expose the top of the panel, yeah, you're going to get water in there and you're going to carry it away, but you still might have that musky, damp stuff because the soils that are in the center of that, they are going to wick towards the drainage system, but they still tend to hold water. The surface tension of that soil tends to hold water. So it's still damp sometimes to the touch. So the key is get the drainage system lower. You in essence take the same thing that you had going if you just barely buried it and you put it lower, so you're pulling that water away and you're causing that top soil to dry. And that's really what you want. You want that top soil to gain some rigidity, to be dry. You want to be able to work around on it. Even if you have an encapsulation on it afterwards, you don't want it squishing around. And then you're really relying on the dehu, whatever else you have in there for air quality. The goal is to dry out that soil. The best way to dry out soil is to get your drainage down to low enough where it collects the water at the lowest point. That's why we recommend you go down at least 9 inches. And if you can afford to go down a little deeper, you can do that. It's only going to help the system. All soils are permeable, so they will perk into our system, but you can assist in that. And understanding how you can address each basement will help you have a more successful install. So back to our OEM recommendations, we have a minimum on crawl spaces of 9.
So what you're saying is if I've got a super, super wet crawl space, I could add a little bit more aggregate around the hydroway system to assist with that moisture level in that particular crawl space. Is that right?
Yeah, particularly just the top. The sides of the panel should be just fine. We want to catch whatever potential surface water. And the technician will identify that. They'll identify if they think this basement is wet because of either a window issue or a crack in the foundation, etc. And then if you want to go back and add additional services, you're comfortable with knowing that the system is going to perform and keep the soils in a good enough condition to walk on or encapsulate.
Yeah, because we've been in a ton of crawl spaces where they've been encapsulated, the pretty white plastics down, and then you go to put your knee down and basically you sink in 6 inches. We make that plastic kind of tight. So if my knee sinks down 6 inches in the plastic, I could compromise the integrity of that plastic, pull the seam tape joints. I just want you to be clear, you're not going to get rid of all the water under the plastic. It's just getting water off of the surface level of the dirt faster so that it's not compromised.
You'll always struggle to get 100% removal because the soil is charging with water over seasons and it releases water over certain types of seasons. It's really hard to get all the water out of soils, even in real dry climates. We're not assuming that if you put a shovel down 9 inches in the center of the crawl space, it's completely dry, but it will be dry enough in most of our studies that you can make the crawl space safer. Like you said, everybody wants that tight look. It looks better. It's wrapping everything nice and finished and then having that nice look and be able to perform on top of a 20 mil or whatever you guys put down. The drainage system is actually pretty key to this whole thing performing right. Otherwise you got a bunch of wrapping paper on a crawl space that looks good and it's not really safe underneath there.
Hey, thanks for watching this video. If you would like to learn more about HydroWay, visit our website at crawlspaceninja.com.